These are some yarns from my stash. We've got a lace weight, a fingering weight, a sport weight. I don't know what this is, but it's a Red Heart Super Saver acrylic, and this bulkier yarn. Now I've got a standard gauge machine, and for standard gauge machines, you can really only use these three weights: lace weight, light fingering, and sport weight. If you try to go above sport weight, you're going to have problems. But you can actually use heavier weight yarns in a standard gauge knitting machine. It just gets a little more complicated, and I'm going to show you how to do that. Wait, before we get started, you should know the risks. If you do this, you could bend needles, break latches, or cause other problems with your machine. Proceed at your own caution. With the Red Heart Super Saver, we're going to work with every other needle. The extra space between the needles leaves more yarn to form the stitches. I'm using an E-wrap cast-on because it's the least risky option. You'll need more weight than you think here. When it comes to tension, all bets are off. I'm guessing at an 8 here. Go slowly for the first few rows to make sure that all the needles are knitting correctly. Here the edge needle didn't knit all of the way, so I'll correct it manually. And then add a claw weight to make sure it doesn't happen again. The carriage is going to be harder to move. The work pulls in towards the center, so make sure to move the claw weights up frequently. Binding off is also a little difficult. I'm trying to go around the gate pegs here, but the first stitch refused. The next ones don't want to knit correctly. Part of that is the grabby nature of this yarn. Part of it is not quite enough weight. So pull down on the work to get the needles to knit correctly. And this swatch is done. You can see how far apart the stitches look. Pull to settle the stitches and it starts to look like a regular old knit. And there's the back. The cast on and bind off edges are going to be a little funky. Now with the bulkier yarn, we'll be using every third needle. It'll take some trial and error to figure out how big a gap you need to leave and what tension makes the most sense. E-wrap cast on again. And I'm adding twice the weight this time. I'm kind of surprised it knit correctly on the first pass. You can see that the carriage is a lot harder to move. I learned my lesson about the edge stitches last time, so I'm adding claw weights early. And another weight for good measure. I'm getting these loops. This yarn is getting stuck on the gate pegs when the carriage turns around. You can avoid this by putting more tension on the yarn manually as it feeds into the carriage. Move the claw weights up often. I'm not going to try to bind off this one, but I'm guessing a sewn bind off would be the best option for a thick yarn. I'll just knit it off the machine. The stitches are pulled even more tightly on this swatch. Pulling on the work will settle them into something more familiar. So here are our swatches. This technique reduces the number of stitches you have available on the machine, but it is possible to make garments this way. I made a sweater for my nephew using category 5 yarn on every 4th needle. This sweater pattern is available on my website, linked below. Happy knitting!